In this video, I'm going to be guiding you through Chapter 31, Fiscal Policy. Fiscal policy involves adjusting levels of government expenditure and taxation to effectively influence aggregate demand in the entire economy. So, simply put, this tool that the government uses will shift the aggregate demand to the right or to the left. And one of the mechanisms is taxes. So, direct taxes are taxes such as income tax, corporate taxes, and these are taxes directly on income and profits earned by firms or individuals. In some countries, these taxes can be as high as 45%. So for every $1 made, 45 cents goes to the government. The other one is indirect taxes. This is a tax that is strictly placed on spending on goods and services. So each and every single item in the economy will have a, let's say for example, 10% indirect tax. So all expenditure in the economy will be 10% more expensive as this money goes directly to the government. And in the case for government spending, so this is the other tool that the government will have for fiscal policy. This provides social protection, which strictly pays for things in the economy that benefits the people and the citizens, such as state benefits, pensions, child benefits, disability allowances, and many more. And there are other major spending that a government will do, such as education, healthcare, and infrastructure projects. And all of this leads to an increase in aggregate demand in the economy. Let me explain. A government decides to build a new hospital and a new school. The government will hire contractors to build these infrastructures, which creates jobs in the economy, thus increasing spending. The contractors will require raw materials such as cement, water, and capital equipment. As they purchase the raw materials from the suppliers will make a profit and they are able to pay their employees, which increases spending. Upon the completion of the hospital and the school, they require people to work in them, such as teachers, janitors, support staff, doctors, nurses, surgeons, and many, many more. And as the people that are working in these institutions now have jobs, they have an income and therefore spend more. So as a result of all of this government spending, the aggregate demand of the economy will increase. Moving on to fiscal deficits and fiscal surpluses. In the case for a fiscal deficit, this builds up over time. The total national debt will unfortunately get bigger. This means that the government will need to spend more of its revenue just paying off its debts. And unfortunately, the future generations may need to be heavily burdened with paying off this debt. What that means is, imagine that you need to pay off the debts of your parents, as they have gone into debt, giving you a great life, sending you to a good school, but they were simply unable to pay off the debt, which has resulted to you paying it back for them. Fiscal surplus. And in a case for this will be positive, as the extra funds could be successfully used to safely lower taxes in the economy, which stimulates aggregate demand, and using this surplus to pay off some of its existing national debt will directly reduce future interest payments. As all debt and all money will have a price on it. This is expressed as interest. This will be covered in monetary policy. Moving on to the impact of a fiscal deficit and fiscal surplus. In the case for inflation, the result of a fiscal deficit, this will cause demand pull inflation if the economy is overstimulated, which will result in overheating. This will cause price to rise sharply. Because remember, an increase in government spending will increase in consumer spending, as explained before. And when everyone spends money at the same time, this will cause inflation. And in the case for fiscal surplus, this reduces the harmful inflation by lowering disposable income and relieving price pressures. And how does the government have a fiscal surplus to reduce inflation? 1. Increase taxes, and 2. Spend less on the economy. And for the case of unemployment, In the fiscal deficit, this will reduce unemployment because extra demand forces firms to recruit staff due to derived demand. As firms get more profit, they will expand their businesses from 1 to maybe 4 different businesses which require people to work in them. This is due to decrease in taxes and or increasing subsidies to the businesses. This will give them higher profit margins, which gives them the incentive to expand. And for fiscal surplus, this increases unemployment as falling consumption forces firms to lay off workers and less government jobs will be available in the economy. Some countries have a very large percentage of government workers which all work for the state, and this will cost the state a lot of money. So if the government was to reduce the required workforce in an economy, unemployment is bound to rise. And in the case for economic growth, a fiscal deficit actively promotes economic growth as businesses produce more to meet the demand. Because remember, in the fiscal deficit, there are lower taxes, which increases one's disposable income, resulting them in spending money in the economy. And the opposite of that happens in the fiscal surplus. This will lower economic growth because reduced spending will heavily decrease aggregate demand. And lastly, the current account. During a fiscal deficit, this will worsen the current account by increasing consumer demand for imports. As consumers in the economy will have higher levels of disposable income, they are willing and able to spend more money on higher quality imports. And in the case for fiscal surplus, this will reduce the current account deficit by lowering demand for its imports. I hope that helped. I hope you guys have a good day. Bye-bye.